I challenge you to a duel.
Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Movie Duel podcast. My name is Peter and I am your host. On each episode of the Movie Duel podcast, myself and one of my co-hosts pick a subject that's based around films, and then we each pick a movie that we think best fits that subject. The only rule being that you cannot pick a film that has already been discussed on the podcast. And this time around I'm joined by Movie Duellist Tarquin to discuss our choices for the most monstrously perverse science fiction film, which we will get into shortly. But before we do, just a few points of order for this episode. So first of all, just some thanks for some likes and reposts of our last episode in which we talked about the best mindfuck movie. With Triangle and Eraserhead, and those go to Jeff Brandon Warner, Jamie Russell, Movie Drone Podcast, Paul from Filmbusters, LJ Human, Ben from Filmbusters, Right Stuff Reviews, Warren Badensky, Dan Bradley, and Glyn Urso. Thank you very much, guys, for all the love over on X. And also thanks to anybody who voted in the poll for that last episode. It did end up 50-50 over on X to Eraserhead and Triangle, but then there was one vote over on Spotify for Triangle as well. So Nicole won the day on that one. But please head on over to X or Spotify if you can and cast your vote for this episode. It's really interesting to see when we get a good few votes and see which way the tide turns on our choices. And please, if you're looking at us on a specific podcast platform, whether it's iTunes or Spotify, Amazon, wherever you listen to us, please just take a moment just to pop and give us a 5-star review, or a review, full stop really, and any comments would be greatly appreciated. It does help us get some extra listeners. Well, of course, you can just contact us via the social medias, on Facebook, on Instagram. Just search for Movie Duel Podcast, or you can find us on X and on Threads at Movie Duel Pod. You can also email us movieduelpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube as well. Leave us comments there. And then finally, you'll be able to find us over at Patreon as well, in which we have some bonus content for just around about £1 a month. You'll get access to our Movie Duellist roundtables, in which we all sort of jump onto a call and pick a subject and basically just have a good chat about the chosen subject. So we've had 2 of those so far, which was our February roundtable, in which we discussed our predictions or what we're looking forward to in 2024, and then most recently the March roundtable was our discussion on who we consider to be the most consistent directors, and we've had a whole heap of really good feedback on both of those episodes. So if you're looking for a bit more extra content from the Movie Duel podcast, then head over there. It's just £1 a month and just helps us to cover some of the costs of running this podcast. And then finally, you can find a bit more of my voice and Vanessa's from the Movie Duel podcast over at the so-called X-Files podcast, which is a brand new podcast that myself and Vanessa have started, in which we talk about the best TV show in the world, the X-Files, season by season, and pick some of our favourite episodes, and have a good time talking about them. So I would encourage you, if you like the X-Files connections in the Movie Duel podcast, head on over to the so-called X-Files podcast. I'll pop a link in the show notes for this episode as well. And as always, like and subscribe, give us a review. It'd be fantastic to get some feedback on that. And then just your usual warnings. This episode will have spoilers and will have strong language. I very much hope you enjoy episode 27 of the Movie Duel podcast.
Whoa, watch it, pervert!
Hey, so welcome back to Tarquin. Tarquin, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. Some technical difficulties, but surviving.
These things are sent to test us. We'll get there. We always get there in the end, by hook or by crook.
Somehow. wow.
So, what have you been up to lately? Anything interesting with your viewing habits? Have you seen anything good?
I finally got round to watching Pam and Tommy,
Oh
which
yeah.
I've been avoiding because I really hated Motley Crue at the time. And I find out that the makers of the program also really hated Motley Crue, and I've been enjoying it a great deal.
I must admit I haven't watched it yet. I did. Is it on Disney Plus? That one?
Yeah, yeah,
I think it was around the same. I watched the Piss. Was it called Pistol? I think about Sex Pistols,
yeah.
and really enjoyed that. I thought that was.
I just bought that for a huge sum from a dodgy dealer
All right. I'm
because I
sure.
looked back on Disney and it wasn't there anymore.
Oh
I took
right.
that off.
Okay. Okay. I always thought Disney was like they owned it kind of thing and stayed on. I didn't
Yeah,
think stuff sort of dropped off it, but obviously it does.
maybe John Lydon's court case had something to do with it.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe Mr. Lydon.
Caused it to be pulled. Shame because he comes across as like the hero basically.
Yeah, that's true. I think it was just more that he felt besmirched by not being asked about it or anything.
Yeah,
But then it was kind of, I think it was based on Steve Jones's
Steve
book, wasn't
Jones is
it? Yeah.
only
But it
book.
was definitely a fascinating program. I keep meaning to check out that Pam and Tommy because I have heard that it's quite good.
Yeah, Seth Rogen, one of his things.
Oh,
He
is
does
it?
all the filthy stuff. Yeah,
All
and,
right.
and he's in
Okay,
it
cool.
as
Sure.
the errant carpenter.
Mm, I should check it out. I watched last week the Iron Claw, which I was very much looking forward to being a wrestling fan about the Von Erich family, um, and was really impressed actually. I thought it was really good. It was it was quite. I felt that it was probably quite accessible to people who aren't wrestling fans, and it still told a really good story. Um, but it still had those beats that a wrestling fan will really like as well,
Okay,
and would thoroughly recommend it.
what's his face? The pretty boy's in it.
Zac Efron, yeah, I mean he's pretty good in it. Definitely not, a lot better than I expected him to be. But the guy, there's one that I can't remember his name, but he's in, I think it's called The Bear, which is a really well thought of series about a chef. I think that might be on Disney.
Yep.
Um, but he plays the main character in that, and he plays Kerry Von Erich, who's one of the sort of younger siblings. And he was probably the star of the film, I'd say. And then last week I watched The Zone of Interest.
Yeah, that looks grim.
It is.
Pe-
I
People
mean,
oblivious to the sausage factory in their midst.
yeah. I mean, it was a good film, but I didn't. I sort of got what it was trying to say, but it was almost like it didn't need to be said. That's the best way I can describe it. Beautifully acted, looks really great, like you'd expect a film from Jonathan Glazer to look. And the acting is fantastic. And just the sort of duality of the film and what you're seeing on the screen and what you're hearing and everything works really well. It's very affecting, but then it just
Is
sort
that
of
him off Sexy Beast and the Scarlett Johansson one?
yes, under the skin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd be wary of trying to judge him in the moment because when he drops something, like he takes so long, the enormity
Yeah.
of it seems to like take a couple of years to reverberate, and then you realise what he's done another masterpiece, the bastard. So
yeah, quite possible. I mean, it certainly stuck with me for the couple of days after I watched it. So I mean, that's always a mark of a good impressionable film, but it's still it doesn't really have a crescendo, and it just sort of ends as well, which I think I always find quite disappointing with films that struggle to have a good finale. I mean, I know it's telling a real life story, but sometimes you just need that bit of something at the end.
seal the deal. Yeah. Well, I'll have to get around to it eventually, but I'm dreading it.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
going to
it's
be
not
heavy.
It's not. I mean, it is very. It's not in your face at all, but it's just. It's very. Everything's sort of under. Just under the surface. So it's really unsettling rather than affecting, I suppose. But enough about the films that we have been watching, and more about the films we've been watching for the podcast. So last time round, you were here, Tarquin. We were talking about our choices for the best female-directed horror, in which we talked about your choice of Near Dark and my choice of The Babadook. And it went to the polls.
Who won?
58% to 42% in favour of Near Dark.
Yes. Great success.
So there you go.
Justice. Is that two in a row?
What was before that? God, my memory's getting terrible.
I can't remember. We'll just say 2 in a row. Yeah, great.
No, it was Car Wash and Clerks. No, I won that one.
We forgot to mention one of the most important things about Near Dark, which is the soundtrack.
Yes, yeah. I remember when I put the post up on Instagram, because you got the option to put music on and stuff, and I always try and look for something that's one of the sort of scores or the music from one of the choices, and there was quite a lot that sort of came up from Near Dark. Really good bangers, really.
Tangerine Dream.
Yes, Tangerine Dream. Yeah.
That was like half the magic of the film. So yeah, give them a mention now.
Absolutely, and it was quite a popular poll as well. 24 votes, which is quite a big one for the polls, really. So it definitely stirred up a bit of interaction from the listeners. So thank you very much to everyone who voted on that. So that was my choice of subject last time round, and then it fell back to you for this episode. What did you go for?
Right, so the most monstrously perverse science fiction film.
Excellent. I mean, before, obviously, we're going with my choice first because you chose the subject. But did you have your film in mind for this one? Is that why you picked the subject?
Yeah, I mean, it's a film that I saw like a couple of years ago, and it just has to be discussed because it's so weird, it's so out there. I need to come to grips with it somehow.
So yeah, with it being your choice of subject, it fell to me to get first choice, and I sort of did struggle a little bit with this because I couldn't really think of something that was, in my opinion, that perverse. There's a lot of just weird science fiction. And there's some, quite monstrous science fiction, but I couldn't think of something that was so sort of monstrously perverse. And then something popped into my head. And ultimately, I went for Society from 1989.
Beverly Hills is known as a society of wealth and privilege, but Billy Whitney doesn't seem to be getting his share. He thinks everyone is out to get him, even his friends.
You never were one of us.
He thinks that he doesn't belong.
And they don't even look like me. Why are you guys doing this to me, huh?
He believes he's seeing things. Bad things. Beyond reality. Is it just his imagination?
I'm not paranoid. All my fears are real.
Or has Billy uncovered something terrible? Something unspeakable?
Don't go home, Billy.
What, you've been living with these people all your life and you didn't know anything about this?
If you don't follow the rules, Billy, bad things happen.
You know you'll make such a great contribution to society.
Who are you?
And now Billy
It's showtime, Billy!
is fighting for more than just his sanity. He's fighting for his life. The time is coming for Billy to take his place in society. It's all about fitting in.
Directed by Brian Yuzna, starring Billy Warlock, Connie Denise, Ben Slack, Evan Richards, Patrick Jennings, Tim Bartel, and Charles Lucia. The synopsis for Society is: after a series of strange events, a teenager, Bill Whitney, begins to suspect that his family and the wider social elite might be part of a sex cult, only to discover that the reality is much, much worse. So, my history with Society is actually quite similar to my history with Eraserhead that I discussed on the last episode with Nicole. I found myself in my sort of teenage years having, my own television in my bedroom, and pretty much free reign to just sort of watch what I wanted. And I'd always find these sort of films late night on a Sunday and just sort of put them on, know nothing about them. There's no sort of trailers or adverts or Wikipedia or anything like that to sort of go, well, I'll give this a go. I would just start watching them and be, in it for the ride, basically. And Society is one of those films. Fortunately, I think it is one of those films that you really benefit from knowing nothing about when you first watch it. And it's certainly monstrously perverse. I mean, from the top, people could argue that maybe it's not science fiction, but I'll get into my reasoning why I think it is a science fiction film. But you can't argue that it's monstrously perverse, for sure. What about your experience with this Tarquin? When did you first see Society? Had you seen it before?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it first came out on video.
All right.
So yeah, back in the day, definitely, and straight away I loved it because it was just so evil and so wrong. And,
it is.
There's nothing quite like it.
Do you know what the word I thought? It's quite dastardly. All these people are very dastardly, especially some of the ones I'll come to in a bit. So this is actually Brian Yuzna's directorial debut. He was well known as a producer in the horror circles before then. Produced Reanimator, From Beyond, and even some family films, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But this was his first foray into the director's chair. Originally, the script was much more of a straightforward slasher. It had a very sort of slasher-esque ending. First being a religious cult, and then finally sort of developing to the ending that we got. Wasn't overly popular on its first release, certainly not in the US. Didn't resonate with that audience in terms of its social themes, its satire, gruesomeness. But it was actually quite a bit of a sleeper hit over here from what I read. And it really found an audience here. But it just didn't in the States. I think it was completed in 1989, but not actually released until 1992. And Mark Kermode seems to think that's because they just didn't know how to market the film. I think if you over-marketed this film, then it would ruin it.
Because you give away the surprise. Yeah,
exactly. Because it really does. It really does hang on that ending and that final sort of 15-20 minutes of the film. But I think it just works really well as just a great tongue-in-cheek horror picture. It doesn't give too much away in the early part of it. It's very much classic horror movie tension. You get this dream sequence that sort of starts us off, doesn't give anything away. You get sort of snippets through the main body of the film that you don't really sort of get an indication of what's actually happening. And there's this overall sort of sense of impending dread. And it works really well. It's got this melodramatic sort of teen drama undertones, which, in any other film I think would really be a disservice to it. But I think it works. The kookiness of it sort of works really well to what you're seeing on the screen as well. As well as this very sort of almost classical music score and these very sort of these almost musical numbers that are sort of peppered through it as well, that are there in the background. I mean, how did you sort of go into this film quite sort of blind when you first watched it?
Well, I've got no memory really. I mean, I knew it was by the producer of The Reanimator, so that was a big sell for me. But yeah, it kind of starts as like a cheesy horror film of that era, with the paranoia and sense of something's going on, and then it just kind of whacks you over the head with the bully fucking his family. Like he gets played a tape recording.
Yeah.
And he is his sister being defiled by his bully in their peer group, and it's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. It's very
it's a bit more
jarring.
than I'm expecting, and so I love that interplay between, on the one hand the cheesy, corny horror film, and then dark themes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do actually. It's something I didn't quite remember because it's not, other than that first watch, and I think I'd watched it maybe 10, 15 years ago, and not revisited it since. But I completely forgot. You get the whole sort of credit scene where it's this sort of zoomed in, sort of blurry vision of the scene that we get at the end.
Yeah, the shunt and the eerie Eton boat song being sung over it.
Yeah. And I totally forgot that, but obviously, it's fair. That again is very unsettling because you don't know what you're seeing, and there's no way to sort of interpret it, but you can see that there's something quite sort of alien going on.
Suddenly you're plugged into a nightmare, like a David Lynch nightmare. So that was his primary vision for the film, Brian Yuzna. This sense of flesh being contiguous, and an orgy where people's bodies were intermingling, and he worked on that with Screaming Mad George, the makeup effects whiz, and they were both heavily inspired by Salvador Dali and The Great Masturbator and paintings of that ilk.
Yes, yeah, I did read that, and you can definitely see when you look at that painting where they're where they're getting that inspiration from.
It's one big pizza.
Yeah. But we should get to the shunt. Saving that till the end. But so Bill, played by Billy Warlock. He's not really somebody I'm overly familiar with, but I do remember him being on Baywatch for a long time, and I believe you did.
Some kind
Baywatch
of soap opera,
Nights
The Young and the Restless, or something like that. I think he was.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he ever sort of really elevated above television circles.
Yeah, he's like serviceable, he kind of does the job, but no more. It's like a short ass, not so good Michael J. Fox or Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it does sort of try to make him come across as a bit of a loser, but then he seems to be one of the more popular kids at school.
Like he's winning the points at the debate.
Yeah, he's got a hot girlfriend, so it does sort of, it is a bit sort of mishmash really in with his character. But then I suppose maybe that's the point, I guess, because he's still seen as a bit of a loser in his.
Yeah, he's got so far, but he's still knocking at the door of the elite society.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the character's really fun, and I think he plays it really well. I don't think it's distracting, and he's essentially carrying this film, and I think he does it really, really quite well, considering its tone and the subject matter. He comes across very sort of alienated, and his sort of public breakdown is quite sort of heartbreaking, really, because he's going down that spiral, and he plays it quite effectively. I think there's a few performances that are a little maybe sort of lackluster. I think his sister, who is Patrice Jennings, who plays Jenny Whitney, she's very a bit sort of whiffy, really. Not the best actress in the world, but then I guess maybe her she was willing to do some of the the nude scenes and
Yeah, she's the Barbara Crampton for this film, the blonde hottie.
yeah. And I think that effect of her in the shower, which she sees obviously quite early on, which is weird and for a number of reasons. But we're her sort of trying to remember it now. Her
breasts are
almost
kind
like
of where a shoulder blade should be.
yeah, and her arse is on backwards or something. It's very weird, very unnerving.
It's bad because he's in there. He should not be in. He shouldn't have.
No, exactly.
And he's zipping up her dress before, so there's dubious overtones a go-go.
Yeah, well, I think that's meant to play into, and I think there's a lot of suggestions with his family, the parents and his sister, that there's this maybe sort of orgiastic, incestuous lifestyle
Yeah,
that
the
they're
way
leading.
the dad looks at the daughter is not right. The way he's trying to pair her off with Judge Carter and things like that. It's all.
And I think it's almost a bit of a shame, on the whole, that they didn't sort of play up to that a little bit more, and not maybe have there's something sort of moving under his sister's skin, and then obviously he sees her in the shower, and then he when he has sex with
Clarissa.
I don't know, Larissa, that's it. Yeah, she's sort of contorted as well.
Back to front. Yeah.
Yeah, and I almost think if they'd have played more up to that sort of, that they were maybe sort of into sex orgies and a sex cult or something, that I think that end and the reveal at the end would have been even more shocking.
What, take out the whole alien element?
Yeah, well, almost not. Not. I think still past the sort of. They still do the shunting and that, but you've got no sort of indication that it's that severe throughout the film, and you're still convinced that they're doing something a bit dodgy, but nothing to the level that they're doing. I mean, I suppose you don't really get that because you're just seeing the contortions and suggestions that people may have died at some point.
Yeah.
And it did actually remind me on this watch of Hot Fuzz as well. It came across very Hot Fuzzy in that they're you get these deaths, Blanchard and Petrie. I know they're not really dead, but these people who are uncovering the wrongdoings are sort of dying these odd deaths, and in the end it turns out to be the local high society. So maybe that was an inspiration for Edgar Wright. I don't know.
I was reminded of Beau is Not Afraid.
Yes.
And Phoenix.
Yeah.
Because you got the Grand Magus mother manipulating events behind the scene, and everything is not what it seems, and it's all working towards her end. And the Shrink plays a very similar role as a facilitator in both films.
Yeah.
Turning out
Yeah,
to be
that's
Steve.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And if you want to talk bad acting, the Shrink in Society, he's good all the way through, as a Shrink, and he's very credible then. But he turns into this ridiculous Joker type character at the end when his cheeks are all extended.
Yeah.
It's dropping all these ridiculous puns.
Yes. Yeah.
Again,
it did get.
ahead.
It did get a bit much that, but I've got to give. Just before we get into that ending, and we're very close to it now. And there's another part that I didn't remember, but Mrs. Clarin, who's Clarissa's mum, and this sort of big woman, I did not get. I didn't understand that.
Yeah. Well, what is
whether
the deal with Clarissa? I mean, is she an alien? Is she part of it? Because, as you say, Billy's hallucinating all the way through. It's a bit like the Babadook, and some of it's obviously fake, some of it's real. Like, he bites into the apple, there's worms there. He looks again, there's no worms there. All the way through the film, there's stuff like that happening. And, so is Clarissa an alien? She's part of Ted's gang.
Yeah,
she
I
works
think...
for Ted, but then at the end she switches allegiance. Would she do that if she was an alien? And her mum certainly seems alien. So what's going on?
Yeah, no, that was a sort of real. But her mum just seems to be this sort of docile, sort of
Lobotomy,
what's his name, Mongo from uh,
Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles kind of character.
She coughs up
But no,
hair, Peter. She
yeah,
coughs up a hairball. What's going on?
yeah. But then she doesn't seem to get involved with the ending, with the shunting at the end. She seems to be,
Yeah, I think she biffs a cop or something.
yeah, yeah. She goes full on Hulk and starts kicking off.
She's a byblow of a nefarious scheme.
Yeah. But yes, we need to get into the ending because this is really the crux of the film. But then again, I don't want to take away from the rest of the film because I think the rest of the film works really well. This is definitely the part of the film that everybody who's seen it is going to remember, and it's going to be the big talking point. But I think everything before it still works really well as a a relatively tongue-in-cheek horror film, and I don't want to take away from that. But this fucking ending. So obviously Bill escapes from the asylum, we'll call it, and makes his way back to his house to find that there's a party going on, and they've still got valet parking, despite what they're doing inside or going to be doing inside. And basically all of the social elite, his family, the police, the local judge. I'll just very much sort of sideline here, who is brilliant in this last scene, or this last stretch, played by David Wiley. Um, One of my favourite characters because he's full on, cigar chewing town official. Sort of reminded me a bit of Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor. But yes, so they he sort of breaks in and sort of claims he knows what they're doing and everything else, and they pull out his friend who he thought was dead, Blanchard, and they begin to shunt, or this sort of shunting ceremony, I guess we'd call it, in which they start to rub him, oil up his skin, and then it's very hard to describe, but then sort of merge into his body.
Yeah, and Blanchard also kind of changes with them. Blanchard becomes more than human,
Yeah.
because his skin is stretched in ways that are impossible. And the judge sticks a hand right up his bum.
See,
Right
seeing
out.
this as a 14, 15-year-old, it just blew my mind. It was
This
just,
is sex.
yeah, it's just incredible. I'd never seen anything like it, and can't actually say that I've seen anything like it since, because what you're seeing is equally sort of gross and beautiful at the same time. And it just goes on, and it feels like it's forever. I mean, it must only be 10 minutes of the film, I think, once they get into the actual sort of shunting. But it looks like a painting. It looks like that painting that it's based on, not, in colour and everything else, but what you're looking at is a piece of art, and it's just a piece of it's a cinematic marvel in my opinion. And this movie deserves credit, just not for that last scene, and for the special, not the special effects, the acting in those scenes. It gets a bit campy when he starts to run into his family and everything. But according to somewhere I read that Brian Yuzna was that disturbed by the actor's portrayal of Blanchard, Tim Bartel, who is being sort of merged with and shunted, that he had to cut it down because he knew he wouldn't get it past the censors.
Yeah, I mean, not surprising. They'd already cut Reanimator to ribbons.
No, I mean, you can imagine being that actor or anybody in that scene really. That it's not going to take much to get into character and to be in the moment. I would say.
Those poor extras.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he sort of.
What did you do to the way work today, honey?
And then you get this, when he sort of then walks on this sort of quasi threesome between his mum, his dad, and his sister, who he learns that obviously they're not his mum and his dad and his sister, and his mum and his sister, I believe, sort of merged into one. His dad's head is coming out of his anus.
If you have any Oedipal fantasies, this is the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost indescribable. I mean, I remember the day after I'd rewatched it, and I was talking to a friend of mine who doesn't like horror, and he's not really big on any films that deal with carnage and death and all that sort of stuff. So, but he's interesting to hear about them, and I was just like, I can't really describe exactly what it is, but it's just quite monumental, and ultimately it is monstrously perverse.
Well, we all know the rich are getting up to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's the rich.
So this is the ultimate acid nightmare of what they're about.
It's literally the rich eating the poor,
Yeah.
or absorbing the lower classes.
It's a bit cheap, the effect, when you look back at it, but when he confronts the Billy confronts the bully, Ted, and sticks his hand up his bum and turns him inside out.
Yes, yeah, that's got to be up there with one of the moments in the film, definitely. And it has a very sort of 80s, early 90s happy ending, ish, I suppose.
Milo, who we haven't mentioned, Billy and Clarissa run off into the night.
Yeah.
But for how long?
Yeah. I was happy though. I expected it would have been very easy for Milo to have been the victim at the end, but I was quite glad when they bring Blanchard back out because he's sort of already dead anyway. Milo's a really sort of likable character, even though he's very much on the fringes of the story. He's still very likable because he's
on,
sort of...
the evolution of horror when they discussed it. The guy who said who was doing it with Mike said that he'd always had a big affinity with Milo because he was a gay-coded character, which I hadn't really noticed. But then when you look back, you can't miss it.
Yeah.
He's got this weird fascination with Billy, and he's leaving him all these kind of strange dolls and dummies and voodoo shrunken heads in his locker and stuff like that, because he's frustrated that their friendship only goes so far and no further.
Yeah.
You're only my friend when you need to be, kind of thing.
Which is, but it's quite. I won't say it's bold, but it's very unusual for late 80s, early 90s, for that representation to be quite normal, I suppose.
Yeah, sympathetic is just another guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't go far. It's all there is that. It's maybe a bit more subtext than other films of that time, but it's definitely treated really well, and it is there. You can definitely see it. But I tell you what else is there in this film, and that's an X-Files connection.
Okay.
So David Wells, who plays Sergeant Burt, who's the copper that seems to be a bit of a crux to Bill. He played Mr. Babbitt in season 7's Rush, which was about a group of teens who discovered the power to move faster than light.
Okay, so he's the tall blonde cop who warns Billy off at the crash site and
Yes,
frisks him.
he's that one.
Yeah, evil thug.
Yeah, he was familiar to me, but I didn't think it was because of the X-Files, actually, which is very strange. I did have to sort of dig for that a little bit. because I'm sure I've seen him something else. I just can't think what. Well, yeah. I mean, Society will always have a bit of a place in my heart because it is one of those films that I discovered sort of on my own, and it definitely, a dip, probably my first dip into something that's a bit sort of Lovecraftian, and I think that's really what it is. We've sort of touched and said that these are aliens, even though they say that they're not aliens in the film.
They say they've been there as long as we have, and it's a matter of superior breeding.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to have some strange affinity with slugs and snails. Which is kind of goes with their contiguous shunting.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something, whether it's evolution or devolution or what, it's definitely a science fiction piece, I would say. And I just, although it's not something I revisit a lot, I do always enjoy it every time I watch it. And I would encourage anybody to watch it because it will really test your senses.
Yeah, no, fair play to Brian Yuzna to being that brave and taking on such serious subject matter within the horror genre.
Yeah.
He's not a great director. I mean, I really hated his Reanimator sequel. So the way he got to make this film was he owned the rights to Reanimator. He didn't make a bean from it because they got ripped off by the distributor. But because he owned it outright, he was able to. When the producers of the film came to him, the makers of the film, and said, "Okay, we want you to do a sequel to Reanimator," he said, "Okay, I'll do it, but it's got to be a 2-picture deal, and I choose the first film." And so that's how he got it made. And he found these two guys, these two rich Beverly Hills kids, and they had the script, as you say. It was about a satanic religious cult originally, and he thought, well, no, I'm into horror. It's got to have a horror angle. So that's where he brought in the whole alien body marshmallow thing. And, yeah, I think it works really well. I don't know if the themes of incest were there in the original script or he brought that to it. The sick bastard. But
Well, I mean, he has got. You look at his filmography, whether it's in terms of producing, directing, or whatever. He's obviously got quite an affinity for Lovecraft and Lovecraftian sort of cinema.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Reanimator films that he's worked on one way or another. From Beyond is obviously based on H.P. Lovecraft as well. And then there was another couple of examples that aren't jumping out at me, but.
Necronomicon, which is like a portmanteau of H.P. Lovecraft, like 3 different stories of his cobbled together. That's one. Yeah.
And he did Return of the Living Dead 3, which I haven't seen, but I've heard it's quite underrated. An underrated gem kind of thing.
Yeah. He said after he'd made Reanimator, Bride of Reanimator, that he realised that the creature, the female creature, was actually the most interesting part of the film, and he'd wasted it by putting her right at the end. So when that was his take for Return of the Living Dead 3 was to make that heroine front and center, and it really works. It's all down to Mindy Clark's performance as the zombie. She gives it the soul. Yeah, it's a good film.
Okay, well, I think I've talked about everything I want to talk about. Anything you want to say before we move on?
No, that's it. But yeah, good, fair play, Brian Yuzna. You came good in the end.
Excellent. Okay, so we will move. We'll take a short break, and we'll be back to discuss your choice. Welcome to the intermission. This is the part of the episode in which I ask my co-host a random question, a question that they've not prepared for, and get their honest first answer. So, Tarquin, are you ready?
Sigh, yes.
Okay. If you could live for the rest of your days in any house or dwelling from any movie, where would it be?
Can I just add that I hate these intermission questions as much as anyone?
I'm on a roll now. I managed to Jamie Nicole. It's now being officially a Jamie. It being Jamied if I manage to stump you completely. So I'm on a roll now. Because Jamie always gets Jamied.
All the things I'm thinking of for TV shows. The house in Parasite is quite fancy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm going to go
that's
with
something
that.
I thought of actually, yeah.
Got a nice basement, so you've got loads of room to expand and play your drums. Yeah.
See, my reasoning was more, you've got that nice sort of basement living space that, you know, when people come round that you don't want to sort of deal with, you can just go down there and
Yeah.
wait till they leave.
Bop them on the head down the stairs.
But it is a nice house. I mean, I always think, you know, these sort of big properties with big glass, you know, windows and open facing sort of glass sides and everything just look very sort of pretentious, and you just think, you know, who's fucking cleaning those windows? But if you're rich enough to have a house like that, then you're going to get someone to do it anyway.
And there's a
But
brick wall, so you're protected.
I must admit, the one in Parasite does look nice.
Yeah. I mean, there's a definite garden wall, so you know you're not open
Yeah.
to the elements.
Yeah, yeah,
Like a nice little secret garden in there. I dig that.
yeah. You got a big wall, so the neighbours can't see you wanking off your husband while your workers are all laid under the table.
That's one way you could go with that, Peter. Yeah, okay.
But when I thought of this question, I thought there was one that was slightly less serious, which was the Overlook Hotel. Just again,
Oh, you couldn't live there. You'd go mad.
well, I'd live there on my own, I think, you know, because you've got all that space. You get yourself a big trike and just, you know, bomb it from one end to the other. You've got, you know, occasionally, you know, sexy nude lady, occasionally nude old lady, a couple of twins to pull some pranks on, and a bear that's potentially going to suck you off. What do you want?
That is my last choice. that is the other end of the spectrum.
But my serious answer would be Bag End.
Okay. Oh yeah. Nice round door.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm pretty short, so I'd probably be fine in there, not banging my head or anything. But it just looks so cosy in them films, you know, the nice fire and this really sort of picturesque kitchen and just a little bit of garden, not too much.
Yeah. Hit up Bilbo Baggins for the weed connection. It's good.
Yeah, oh yeah. Excellent. Okay, well, shall call that the end of the intermission, and we'll head back to the main episode. Thank you, Tarquin. Okay, so obviously second choice was yours, Tarquin, and you said that you sort of had this movie in mind. What did you go for?
Okay, so Robot Monster.
With the swiftness of a deadly cosmic ray, the Earth is invaded by indestructible moon monsters. Their ghastly mission, death for all humans. What astounding technical developments are being made to protect mankind? Robot Monster brings you an actual preview of the devastating forces of our future. Unsuspected revelations of incredible horrors that will terrify you with their brutal reality.
There is no escape from me. Very well. I will recalculate. Your death will be indescribable. Fool humans, there is no escape.
Directed by Phil Tucker, and starring Claudia Barrett and George Nader, John Brown as the voice of the robot monster, and George Barrows as the space gorilla. 1953.
But hit us up with that synopsis, please.
Alright, so sparing no expense, an elderly mother takes a young family for a picnic in a rock quarry. Besides Mother, there's Alice, a bright young woman in her early 20s, 9-year-old Johnny, and 7-year-old Carla. Johnny and Carla go for a stroll. Johnny in a spaceman outfit, Carla obsessively trying to initiate a game of house. They happen across two archaeologists, cheerfully defacing a Bronze Age depiction of early man in precisely the way that archaeologists traditionally do not. The two vandals down tools to chat to the kids and meet Alice and her mother, who have followed the kids down. The picnic resumes and the curiously age-divergent family take a nap, possibly knocked out by the toxic fumes emanating from the industrial slag heap they are sitting upon. There are at least two explanations for what happens next. A. Johnny has a dream, thus proving Dr. Frederick Wortham essentially correct about the degrading effects of salacious comic books on a juvenile mind. The dream concerns a space gorilla stalking his family and murdering them one by one in a post-apocalyptic world. Or there's the theory I passionately ascribe to. B. Johnny is the free-eyed raven. He is astrally projected back hundreds of millions of years to a prehistoric era, immediately preceding the dinosaurs, where doppelgangers of the characters we have already seen live a desperate, frugal life, sleeping on a pallet in a poorly wired, unfinished patio, in the last dwindling remnants of a prior human civilization destroyed by our hero, Roman, extension XJ2. Alas, poor Roman. He may be shit at maths and somewhat tardy at picking up the phone, but he has caused the destruction of all the major cities on Earth. What has his flaming arsehole of a boss ever calcified besides his pants? The great guidance, waving a violin bow around like he's all that. Besides the annoying family and a couple of rogue scientists, Roman has annihilated everyone on the planet Earth. 2 billion souls. Nothing above the Lepidoptera level exists. Do you know how many butterflies you'd have to catch to make a decent sandwich? The great guidance probably does. Even now it would be difficult for our foolish Earth computers to calculate how much of a tosser that guy is. Surrender death or resistance death? That is the question for Roman. Should he sublimate his will entirely to the great guidance, that wanker, or defy his programming and seek conjugal bliss with Alice, the last saucy morsel of a delinquent and impertinent species? The calculation is his to formulate. We honour him here today. I think if you listen to that 5 times, it will start to make sense.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I think that sums it up pretty well, to be fair. I mean, I'm glad that you sort of brought up Three-Eyed Raven, because I thought that the professor was almost like this sort of 50s Craster from Game of Thrones, where he's got this sort of his own little family in this sort of wasteland past the wall, and it seems to be marrying them off or doing weird shit with them, basically. But how did you come across this film, for starters?
Okay, so I like the Cramps. They're this band, and the Cramps like B-movies. And so people who like the Cramps release these like tapes, compilation tapes of like old songs from the 50s and the 60s, weird songs, and they'll intercut film clips from them. And then, so there were 2 clips that were on it. One was you were talking more like a human than a Roman, and the girl saying, "Oh, you're so bossy," and then the guy saying, "I'm bossy, you're so bossy, you ought to be milked when you come home at night." And I thought, what an amazing clip! I've got to find that. So for one of my things, and so I asked on the groups, where did that come from? And eventually someone said, "That's Robot Monster," and then so I saw it, and my fascination began.
Do you know what this? I'm going to say it because it is. This film is shit.
Yeah.
But it's such good shit. It's so much fun. And this just took me back because this is a kind of film that I would watch with my grandma when I was younger. Maybe not this one. We definitely didn't see this film. I have no recollection of seeing this film, and I'm pretty sure I would remember it if I saw it, even at a young age. But this is proper 50s B movies about aliens, and if you have, any inkling of enjoying those and have a nostalgia or a fondness for them, this is just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, because it takes itself seriously, even though, on every level it's terrible. They think they're making Hamlet.
Yeah, it's they think that they're making, a very sort of prophetic film about, this sort of, like you say, this gorilla robot that's having doubts about its mission and this sort of family dynamic that's really sort of
warped. Yeah.
It's so bizarre. And I must admit, I did really took me out of it when obviously you get the first sort of inkling of the spaceship coming down or this sort of lightning effect, and then the kid sort of passes out, or they all pass out, and then he sort of wakes up and all of a sudden they're a family, and it's like they've been married for 26 years, and it's like I don't know if I've missed something completely here, and then I was very tempted to sort of rewind it back and sort of see if I had done, but obviously not. But it's proper classic.
They filmed it in like 4 days. They were in a desperate rush, that long, for 16,000, and in a desperate rush to beat House of Wax to the screen, because that was a 3D film, and this is basically a 3D gimmick film cobbled together to get in on that craze that was there for 1 year, and
but I can't actually see what would be look particularly good in 3D in this film, because there's not much.
There's
unless
the bubbles,
it's
the bubble machine,
the
automatic billion-dollar bubble machine. That's it.
Yeah,
and then the one
fucking
shot
bubbles
of the gorilla
everywhere
coming towards you at the end.
The bubbles, fucking hell. I had such a nostalgic feeling as well when he's got the little toy ray gun at the start, and just that sound, because I remember having those guns myself, and just that noise was just so familiar, and it was lovely. I really loved it. And to be fair, the child actors were better than some of the adults.
Yeah, the kid's good. The boy, Johnny.
Yeah. For the 50s, and generally there's some really fucking annoying kids in 50s movies. They were pretty good. They were pretty bearable.
When he confronts Roman and he says, "You look like a pooped out pinwheel," and you can just see in his face, you look shit. You're a really rubbish effect. I'm having to deal with you,
Yeah, and everybody, even Roman is out acting the professor, because he's fucking terrible.
Yeah. This weird Nazi that they found somewhere. Yeah. Well, it's all about Roman for me, I mean, I think he's my way into the film, because I just feel for him as like an oppressed worker. This horrible boss who's just giving him such a hard time when he's doing really well.
Yeah.
He's destroyed the planet, he's killed everyone basically. But no, it's just not enough for his boss.
He's getting grief about 8 people.
Yeah, come on.
Who aren't going to die anyway, because they're immune to whatever it is. This sort of
calcinator.
I don't know, is it like some kind of lightning field? They've worked on what was it? Is it some kind of cure for the common cold or something, or cure for all the ills in the world?
Yeah. So this is Phil Tucker's genius as so in the script there's a really important line where Alice has a cold before Johnny falls asleep, and she says, "Boy, if somebody invented the cure for the common cold, they'd be the greatest scientist in the world." Johnny incorporates that into his dream. So that's why the professor has invented this serum that defeats the common cold. But Phil Tucker
Yes.
just thinks, right,
Yes.
we're in a rush. We've got to get 10 scenes done today, so fuck that. And then you just have this
Yeah.
huge question mark looming over the whole film.
He's done all of that from this sort of decrepit villa
Patio, yeah.
patio. Yeah. Oh, I love it.
I love. Then they use so all the dinosaur stuff. That's just stock footage that they ripped off other films, like a common B movie trick.
What the lizards and the dinosaurs.
Yeah, the lizards with things stuck to their backs and things.
Yes.
Like dinosaurs.
Yeah. You can't make that these days, can you? But I remember that. I remember them from. I mean, even sort of like into the 60s, 70s. They were doing that. I think Journey to the Centre of the Earth and.
Yeah, that was Irwin Allen's big trick, was sticking things onto the back of lizards.
Yeah.
But I love so the alligator rolls over a lizard a couple of times and chucks it into a crevice, and then it just gives this great saucy smile to the camera, like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is always. I always found them quite disturbing. Those kind of effects. I mean, they are very. They must be very cheap to do, obviously, and it's not. They don't look, like convincing dinosaurs or creatures or whatever. It's very clearly sort of backwards projection or whatever. But I remember as a kid always finding them really sort of disturbing.
Yeah. I mean, the way you're meant to do it is through scale by showing like tiny people in the foreground and then.
Yeah. Although not as disturbing as the love story in this film with is it Johnny and Alice, who he's sort of constantly putting her down and not giving her the credit that she sort of rightly deserves, and then they go out into the desert. He loses his shirt, and that's it. Game over for Alice.
Yeah, they do that strange mime sequence.
Yeah. It was quite. And then they go back and say that they're engaged to be married. Because I'm obviously guessing it's they've done the dirty and.
Yeah, because the mother says, "Isn't it obvious? They're in love." So, like, obviously, filth on the back of her dress or something.
Yeah, and there's not a chemist in sight, so they're gonna be it's definite shotgun wedding.
It'll be the social event of the year.
The social event of the year that you thought you 6 people are going to go to. Yeah, it's just incredible. And then Johnny's there for the wedding with his shirt off because he's took his shirt off because it had great big holes in it, and obviously wanted to impress Alice. So he leaves it off for the wedding, and then immediately when the wedding's finished, he puts his holy shirt back on. So you could have dressed up a little bit for your wedding, even though it's got bloody great holes in it. But yeah, it's just it's just ridiculous. But I definitely agree about the Roman character. And it's a shame really, because I think if they'd have gone just a little bit more, if it wasn't a gorilla suit, just something, even a very cheap sort of looking robot suit, maybe.
Yeah, that was the plan. So that's what Phil Tucker originally envisaged. Like they'd hire a robot suit and do it that way. But then they looked into the price and there was one. So he said, "All right, I know this guy who's got a gorilla suit. He'll do it for $40 a day. So we'll get him in."
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, there is I'm assuming you know the story about that. It took the negative sort of reviews of this film quite personally, and I believe tried to commit suicide. Is that right?
Yeah. So, with the dignity befitting his station, he booked into the Knickerbocker Hotel and sent the press a letter saying that he was going to take sleeping pills and kill himself because the producers had screwed him out of, Al Zimbalist had screwed him out of all of his money, and they wouldn't even let him go to the cinema to see it. But it turns out that was a bit of a scam. He was best mates with Lenny Bruce, the comedian.
Oh yeah.
So Lenny Bruce wrote the letter. Lenny Bruce rang up the newspaper, and it was like a little scam that they did between them. And Phil Tucker actually did that another 3 times, like in different cities. So it was a broken scam that he pulled.
I see. Well, the dirty rotter.
It's like correction for IMDb there.
Well, I never. Dirty Phil Tucker. It does. I mean, it has. There's a very bold move in this film for the 50s, where where Roman essentially throttles the little girl to death.
Yeah, pretty brutal.
Yeah, you don't see that very often.
Kills
And the professor who's supposed to be a father is really cold about it as well, and very matter of fact.
Yeah,
it's like, oh well.
We enjoyed her while she was here, but come on, get inside.
Yeah, it's like fucking hell, Jesus. He's like, he just wants to go and finish the social event of the year.
He's planning the next one, yeah.
Yeah, be her funeral. And then, so then Roman, human, very on the nose, sort of on the nose.
Short for robot man.
Robot man, yes. But then even they human when they pronounce human as well. Well,
foolish human. Calculate your chances. Negative.
And it was the same people who. It was the same actor for Roman and the great guy.
Yeah, same guy, George Burroughs.
Yeah,
With
so he's effective.
helmet,
Fair fucks to him. He's playing aggressor and worker in the same breath.
Yeah, I mean, and it's because he's so pissed off that it works. They got these great shots of him just tramping up and down a hill, looking really unhappy with his lot, and because he was in a gorilla costume, boiling hot, 2 pairs of tights over his head and the helmet.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to be.
But it does work well. He's acting well through that bloody costume for sure.
Yeah,
you can tell. Although I do love it when he kidnaps Alice, tries to tie her up, but just thinks fuck it and knocks her out.
Yeah,
goes into the cave, comes out, and she's tied up anyway. She's tied herself up.
Yeah. You can just see on his face, like the phone's going, his boss is on the line, he's got to answer the phone, but he's got this really hot girl that he wants to mess around with. Oh, fuck it, smacks her out. And she goes.
I think Tarantino seeing this film, and that's the inspiration for that scene when Jackie Brown, where Robert De Niro's just getting grief off Bridget Fonda and just shoots her. It very much gave me that sort of vibe. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's like you don't see his face, and he's just acting with his body, but you can just see that sort of frustration. It's like, for fuck's sake, twat. That's it. But I mean, I can only guess that this would have been covered on like Mystery Science Theatre.
Yeah, it was part of the big. So the Medved brothers, Harry Medved and his brother. I have to name, I've forgotten. Wrote the Great Golden Turkey book in the 70s and the 50 Worst Movies, and it was one of the ones they covered. So it came to prominence then, along with Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah, but I must say, I mean, I've seen Plan 9 from Outer Space, but I enjoyed this a lot more. I mean, for one, it's incredibly short. I think it is literally just over an hour.
Yeah, 62.
Which is, yeah. But it's got all that, it has got all those sort of cheap tricks that you can sort of see. There's the space station that's not really a station, but it's a little sort of space rocket, and when the lightning kicks up, you can see the shadow of the person who's sort of holding it and flying it around.
Yeah, the guy holding it by the hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is a space platform? Is it like a ledge in space where astronauts wait for space buses? It's very, very odd. There's a whole garrison of astronaut soldiers up there.
Yeah. That we never see. And they can communicate from their patio, which is amazing.
Yeah, they haven't got a fridge, but they've got a TV screen that can talk to Roman.
Yeah. Yeah, and Johnny hasn't got more than one shirt. Amazing.
So I guess the reason I picked it as Monstrously Perverse is because this is Johnny's dream, and in Johnny's dream, his sister is prepared to sleep with a gorilla.
Yes.
That's weird, huh?
Yeah, for sure, and I think, you know, I think it had a lot of potential to be even weird because obviously there is this suggestion that Roman is you know is in some way attracted to Alice.
Definitely, yeah. He's like, put that view screen back on Alice, the girl. She interests me.
Yeah, yeah. You know, he's not making any bones about it. You know, she's a very nice looking lady, but you know, you can't help but think if they added another half an hour on this to this film, would that have been geared a bit more towards making this a bit of a King Kong type story, which it had the potential to sort of be. And to be honest, I'm quite glad that it maybe didn't go that far because it would just be fairly obvious, I guess.
Well, if I win the lottery, I'm going to remake it, and things are going to happen. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think there is a story. There's a story in there. I mean, obviously, it's not got the budget or the special effects to really sort of say it, but I think there is an interesting story in there. If you take out maybe the dream sort of logic to it,
take out the beginning and the ending, and then just have the prehistory. Yeah,
it was definitely, you know, an interesting tale. It wasn't, even though it's quite ridiculous in its execution. I still thought it was a stand-up sort of science fiction bit of fluff. Really, it still kind of made sense in a way, in a very sort of obscure way. It made an interesting. It was just interesting.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I stuck with it.
Yeah, excellent. Well, you know, I'm going to put this up there with Psychomania as a really great introduction from you, Tarquin. So thank you very much.
Cool. All right. I'm glad of it.
I'm fighting the good fight for Psychomania. I've recommended it to so many people. I don't think they've watched it yet, but they keep promising me they're going to because it just needs to be watched. And I will thoroughly recommend Robot Monster if you want to just smile, basically. Because I think that's what it is. You know, it's not. There are some bad films that you just think, oh, you know, this is bad. It's terrible, and you can't have any kind of fun with it, and you're just irritated by it, which is the worst kind of bad film. But this is just a lot of fun, and you can smile. It made me smile for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to do it with a straight face, this kind of film, and they all have that, I think. I mean, they're all trying their best. You know, Roy, the professor, they all seem to believe what they're doing, and I think that's why it works. Whereas I can't stand the Troma kind of bad movie where everyone's got this kind of smirk on their face, like, yeah, this is trash, and that's what you want. No, straight face.
Well, yeah, so very good. I think a couple of choices, great subject. Thank you very much, Tarquin. I mean, next time around, as we mentioned on our last Patreon special, so the first time we announced it on the main podcast, the next time you're here, you're going to be going one-on-one with one of the other movie duelists.
Interesting.
You've been paired up with Nicole for this one, and Jamie and Vanessa are going to be going face-to-face as well for our next sort of round of episodes. So that'll be something slightly different, but we're going to give it a go, and it should be interesting. As always, keep an eye on your social medias to find out what the subjects are going to be for those two episodes. They should be announced fairly soon. But in the meantime, Tarquin, have you got anything that you want to
plug? Yes.
Plug or promote?
So, my YouTube channel has come back to life. Fastbinder62 on YouTube. Foxtrot Alpha Sierra Bravo India November Delta Echo Romeo 62. Yeah, I've just done one for the chat song, The Price of Smokes, which is about cigarettes and murdering the government. I've got some big stuff coming soon. concerning smokable combustibles, and so check that out.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I watched a new video the other day. I always think they're amazing. I do love a good montage video, and the songs that you pick are always awesome as well.
Oh, cheers, mate.
So keep it up. But I will drop some links for Tarquin's YouTube channel in the show notes for this episode. That's pretty much it until next time. Just leaves me to say goodbye, and for Tarquin to say...
How do you want your tea? Milk, sugar, or do you want me to pee in it?